Quarterback's a very unique position on a football team. It takes leadership ability, it takes ability to play the game, but it also takes that it factor. We have some of those players from Tennessee that had that it factor. Heath Shuler, Condredge Holloway, Dewey Warren, Jeff Francis, Pat Ryan, Andy Kelly. Thanks for being here today. Condredge, what is it? Why does a quarterback have it?
I would be first, but I think the it factor is being able to lead a group of guys as a team and individually. See, a lot of people think you get in the huddle and you make a rah-rah speech and everybody follows you. I don't think that's the way it works, and I think everybody will agree with you. You've got to know individual people. You've got to know how to motivate them, and you've got to know when to motivate them. Sometimes it's not necessary. I never had to motivate Haskell Stanback, Stanley Morgan. But, you know, occasionally, other players, you had to say something to them, and you had to know how to do it. You can't just give a patent speech and it hit everybody. So you have to know your individual players and how to motivate them.
You know, you all had competition when you came into play. Heath, you had to beat out people to play. So some of you had the same ability, but you had it. And that's what separates you, right?
Well, I think playing at the University of Tennessee, first of all, you getting the opportunity to come here to play is a dream come true. And then when you step in and, you know, the guy behind me here, Andy Kelly, I mean, he was the guy that I looked up to. I watched practice. I watched how he handled himself. And talking about how the it is, he had it. And as a young player, you want to watch every move that he makes, not only on the field, in the practice field, but how he conducted himself off the field and how he had that leadership role through the entire team, offensively, defensively. All eyes were upon him. And so you try to emulate, and the things that are successful that he was able to do, you try to implement that same. And sometimes you change a little bit of it and you alter it. And most importantly is how do you get the most out of each player? And Condredge is right, is every player is different. You can motivate one player much easier than you can the next. But most of it really comes down with, as an individual, you know, are you going to lead by example? You know, are you going to be the toughest guy on the field? Are you going to the person who knows the most about the offense? And are you going to know the most about your opponent? And putting those factors together, you lead by the way you example. It's not always what you say.
You got to push the right buttons, don't you?
Well, you do, Bob, and the thing about it, when you walk into the huddle, you got 10 guys looking in your eyes. If there's any doubt in your eyes, then they're going to get doubt in their eyes. So as Condredge said, some guys you can get on and some guys you cannot get on. I mean, there was a few I had in the huddle I wouldn't dare say anything to. Some you could grab by the face mask and jerk them. But I think the quarterback has to have that confidence level. And I think the other players see that in the other teams, defense, your defensive players and your other offensive players. But there cannot be a doubt in your mind about we're going to score on this play. You know, you get open, I'll hit you, whatever. So long as you do that, these other 10 guys are with you.
You know, I think it's also about the preparation work that goes in. Jeff, I know that you redshirted a year, and then in '85 you kind of watched Tony Robinson and Darrell Dickey, and then suddenly you're in a competition for the starting job. Walk us through finally you getting on the field.
Yeah, well, that's quite a while ago. I think one of the biggest things, and I think all quarterbacks that kind of play for a while, I think you have to develop a little bit of a thick skin. You know, for me, and most of the guys here, maybe, I don't know, Heath, Peyton, some of those guys, maybe they never got booed and had things go wrong, but I think all of us here have had those times where it doesn't always work out like you plan it. And I think just having a thick skin, being able to kind of overcome some of that adversity, I think your teammates see that, and eventually you become a leader. And I think that's kind of what happened for me.
You know, you guys all won big games, but Jeff, you probably had the toughest skid of anybody. I mean, you started the season 0-6.
We try not to talk about it.
No, but you stayed with it. You stayed with it, though, and won your last 5 games, and that was one of the I guess one of the thing that people remember you for, keeping that team together.
Yeah, and it was a tough time, and I you know, we kind of passed the torch to Andy, and some of those guys, a lot of freshmen that were playing at that time. They went on to win an SEC championship, and really from that time on, Tennessee's had a lot of success on the football field. Not that I try to take credit for that, but I feel like that senior class we had some guys that kind of stuck to it and kind of closed ranks and you know, kind of finished strong for it.
Yeah, Andy, you were a guy, too, that you had to kind of wait your turn as well. I mean, you started your first year not till the 6th game of the season because Sterling Hinton was the starting quarterback. In fact, he won, his first 5 games.
Right.
Well, it's kind of going back to what he said. When he came in, he was looking to me. When I came in, I was looking to Jeff and trying to learn from Jeff and Sterling and trying to get a feel for the program, feel for the game, feel for playing at this level. And I think going back to kind of what Dewey and Condredge was saying about the quarterback position, a lot of it goes back to respect. And the players that you're on the field with, they have to respect you, especially at the quarterback position. And there's a lot of different ways to gain that respect. And it goes back to what they said about the different individuals. There's different ways to gain respect from different players. And you have to walk a kind of a fine line as a quarterback in dealing with the different players. Some guys you have to kind of maybe take to the side and talk to individually. Other guys, maybe 2 or 3 guys, you can get together and give them a little pep talk. I never was a big rah-rah type guy. I tried to gain my respect through being, I'm not the smartest guy on the field, but as far as knowing what we were trying to accomplish as an offense, knowing what we were trying to accomplish on any given play, any given series, and being that guy that the other players could look to at any time. When you break a huddle, if one guy has that kind of distant look in his eye, like, oh God, maybe that blank stare, and I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. You break the huddle, and one guy's kind of.
You were a freshman, that was you.
Well, that was me for a long time. It was.
And you better be able to tell him what to do.
And you better be able to tell that one guy, because in almost every game, it's going to happen. You break that huddle, and these guys know what I'm talking about. That one guy standing there, not really going to his position, kind of looking like that blank stare, and we know what that blank stare means. This guy's
has no idea.
He has no idea. He's gone blank for a second. And you've got to be able to tell him in a split second exactly what he's got, where he lines up. Maybe even maybe some adjustment he might have, and you've got to do it in a split second because that play clock's always going. You don't want to waste time out. So it has to do with respect, and guys that if they know you're that guy, even when you make a mistake as a player, you're going to keep that respect. They're going to look to you, and you're going to be that leader. It's just going to naturally come if you're on top of your game, and those guys can respect you in that manner.
But, Pat, you've been around so long. Quarterbacks have to earn that respect, though, don't they?
They do, and all these guys, they talk about, leading the team, leading your players in the huddle, all that. All that's great, but you better be able to make plays. Okay, nobody mentioned that. You better be able to go, and you better be able to throw it. You better be able to make it first down when you need it. Run that drive at the end of the half, or a drive at the end of the game that ties the ball game, or get you to 3 points to take you ahead. All the leadership and all the rah-rah and all that stuff is great, but if you can't, skill-wise make the plays, it doesn't mean anything.
But you got to turn the page too, Condredge. Your first game at Georgia Tech, you're probably known more for a defensive play you made in that game and your 7th pass attempt, an interception, and you ran the guy down, McKenzie.
Well, just like Pat just said, making plays. It's not necessarily an offensive play. In my case, it wasn't. It was, a play that a lot of things didn't go right. First of all, you don't call a quick out to the field, from the far hash. I'm not that good. So, and then when the ball gets tipped and there is an interception, we used to practice that. And Pat can tell you, they'd have a sideline drill where you throw a simulated interception and you'd run down the sideline to tackle the guy because it practiced taking the right angle to cut him off. And there's a lot at stake for me on that one particular play because, it was a big deal with the quarterback situation there at Georgia Tech that day. It was all the reporters were asking about the quarterbacks and, the story, the black quarterback here. We got one on Georgia Tech side, we got one on Tennessee. We're going to find out if they can play, or are they just athletes that want to play the position. So I was totally convinced after I threw the interception that you probably need to make this play because
you better make it right.
If you don't, you've got DB written all over there.
By the way, it was pretty athletic play.
It was a really great play.
But that's part of it, though. That goes along with the mental toughness and being able to stand in front of your team and tell them, I'm all in, whether it's physical, whether I make a mistake and correct it, whether you make a mistake and correct it. I'm all in. You need to be all in with me. And once you get that response from them, it's fun and it's easy to operate.
Heath, you remember your first pass attempt against Southwestern Louisiana?
Interception.
Yeah.
Yeah, very first pass.
And there was a big buildup with who's going to be the starting quarterback, and went down right to the game day. And so you get out here against Southwestern Louisiana. Talk about that very first throw you made.
Well, drop back, you make a throw, and it's for an interception. The only good part about it, I had 100% completion percentage that day. We only threw the ball about 8 times.
Your guys caught 8, they caught 1.
Yeah,
Right?
so at the end of the day, how you overcome adversity. Put that play behind you, and I think that's what the team's looking at. There was no one that I could run to the sideline. Andy wasn't there. He was gone. And so it wasn't no one I could run to the sideline and say that could mentally get me back in the framework. But that was the things that I had been taught in the offseason working with Condredge. Those are the mental preparations that, look, when something goes bad, put the play behind you and let's move on to the next one. And I think that's what the team, talking about leadership, whether it be an interception in a crucial game against Georgia Tech, or the first start that you throw the first pass for an interception. The team's really looking at, how are you going to overcome this? What's your next play?
But there's such a big buildup that in that preseason, who's going to be the starting quarterback? And you throw that first interception, you had to think, oh my gosh, have I blown this deal? What went through your head as you ran to the sideline?
Well, I was more worried about not what the fans were thinking, and what David Cutcliffe was thinking. Because we all know
that phone on the
that
sideline.
phone on the sideline. Was
You don't want to go pick it up.
Oh no! What is Coach Cut going to say to me now?
Yeah.
What was this? And so I wasn't even worried about what Coach Majors was saying, or Coach Former at the time. Either one of them, as being the offense coordinator, is what David Cutcliffe, because my whole world was surrounded what David Cutcliffe said. He was preaching the gospel. Everything he said, I took it into consideration, and I knew how he would get on us, and making an interception. But the great thing is that conversation I had with him, he never mentioned it.
Right, just next play.
It's real funny, Bob, when you don't get on the phone when you do something good. It's always picking the phone up when it's something bad, because you don't want to go pick that phone up.
I had a lot of phone conversations.
You try to stay away from that phone call.
Well, I was in a total different situation. Coach Wright was on the field. He wasn't up in the box. So he was, in his southern way, he'd come over and say, "Hell, son, come here. We need to talk."
Yeah, come sit down.
Come sit down. He'd take you down then, and it looked like you were really getting it, but there's a certain calm when that happens that makes you understand what you did and why you did it. And I never had one of those conversations where it was a screamer. No. It was always, here's what you did, here's what you can't do, now get your butt back out there and play.
You mean they didn't pull a Spurrier on you, did they?
No.
Now that
didn't go
said,
that far.
You can talk to all these guys. Not everybody automatically walks out on the field and makes a mistake and just throws it behind him and moves on. I mean, that's a learning process for a lot of people. It was for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me time to realize that that's gone. Don't care what the fans are saying or what the coach is saying. It affected me initially right off the bat. I'll admit it. But as time went on, I learned that, you got to put that behind you and go on. And when you can do that, then you can go on and be effective. If you can't do that, you're a liability the rest of the
You
game.
don't want to let your teammates down. When you throw that interception, it's almost like, great time of day. I mean, whether it be a tip or whatever, but you got those other guys there. That's what's big.
I bet you in this group, everyone can tell about their interceptions more than they can their touchdowns.
Oh, absolutely.
Easily. I can still see passes I missed back in my senior year. Still kind of haunt you, and I don't remember any. I don't remember that many touchdowns, but I remember someone missed. God.
Or a fumble.
Oh,
Yeah.
I never did that.
I did.
Jeff, you had one game against Alabama where you threw 4 interceptions.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
No. But I'm saying a lot of guys that would have crushed them, but you had to put that behind you.
It was amazing because that was one of those games that I can remember. For me, it seemed like the first couple series, everything was kind of. I was like, those guys, they got 20 guys on defense, and it always took me a series or two to figure, okay, this
Some
guy's a
games are
strong
like
safety.
that, yeah.
Well, that was one of those games, man. I'm like, first series, man, everything's crystal clear. I know exactly what they're doing. I mean, I'm on it, and the ball felt good coming out of my hand. Problem was, I got a little greedy at times. We got down a little bit, and it was a great learning experience for me because we got down early, and I tried to, be a hero, try to bring my team back all by myself. And then when you do that, bad things happen. I ended up throwing 4 interceptions. We lost, and obviously it wasn't a good story for Tennessee. I made a lot of Alabama highlight tapes that year, but it was a great learning experience for me.
But that's what it's about. Dewey, you came in while Coach Dickey was making the transformation to
Yeah,
the
I didn't
T
have
formation.
nobody to look up to.
Yeah.
Because they were single wing.
Yeah. And Charlie Fulton was a quarterback, and then he gets hurt, and suddenly you're thrown in the middle of things.
Well, I remember what George Cafago said. I was redshirted in '64. He always would tell the guys, when you get your opportunity, take it and run with it, because you might not get it again. And I'd played some early in the season there in '65, but we were playing Ole Miss in Memphis, and Charlie Fulton hurts his ankle the first play. Well, I go running on the field, and I get in the huddle, and boy, I'm excited. This is my chance. You remember what Cafago said. And everybody started laughing. Well, I couldn't understand why they were laughing. They said, well, we know you're crazy, or are you going to wear a helmet today? I forgot my helmet, had to call a timeout and go back over, and there stood the tall man looking at me. And oh boy, did I, but I got back, and then we ended up getting beat 14-13, and then from then on we strung them out. So that's kind of how it was. But competition makes you better. Competition makes you better. And Charlie was a good friend of mine and a teammate, and he ended up playing some quarterback, ended up playing some tailback, and helped us win.
You know, we look at you guys, you're all from different parts of the country. Andy, of course, from Tennessee, but the rest of you have been drawn from Oklahoma and Illinois and other places, Georgia. What was the link that got you guys to Tennessee? I mean, what made this place special for you guys? Pat, you're probably the farthest away in Oklahoma.
You know, I'd never been anywhere. I grew up in Kansas, Oklahoma, so I might have been to Texas once and maybe Arkansas, but I'd been in the Midwest or the Southwest my whole life, and all I knew was flat and windy. You know, kind of gray, and I mean, it gets pretty in the summertime now and then, but Tennessee started recruiting me. You know, back in those days, they weren't recruiting you when you were a sophomore or a junior. Usually it came, unless you were Condredge. So I heard from a senior, they invited me out for a visit, and I came out to Tennessee, and I'd never seen any place as pretty in my life. It was gorgeous. I mean, the hills, the green, it was just beautiful, and the weather was nice that weekend. And I know it sounds juvenile or whatever, I was sold. I didn't care what kind of football program they had. This place was beautiful. The girls were good looking. You know, this is where I was going. And that's pretty much what sold it on me. And of course, they showed me film of their offense. Coach Wright was the offensive coordinator then, and they threw it a good amount of times. So I thought it'd be a good fit for me, so that's what got me here.
Connors, you were, of course, recruited by a lot of places to be anything but a quarterback. In fact, that down at Auburn, Pat Sullivan was the guy, their Heisman Trophy winner, the guy that kind of walked you around the Auburn campus. Did that sway you at all about maybe going to Auburn?
Actually, Dave Beck was the guy that he was my high school teammate, and he kind of took me under his wing down there, and it was an interesting deal. I enjoyed my Auburn trip. I enjoyed my Alabama trip. It just came down to I wanted to play quarterback. I wasn't interested in playing defensive back without getting a shot at playing quarterback. And Ray Trail and Coach Battle were the two guys that said, look, if you can play, you've got an opportunity. Now, if you can't, just, you'll play someplace else or you'll stand over here with me like Ray tells me all the time. But I cherished the opportunity, and I was excited about getting the opportunity to play quarterback, and I just was ready to go compete. I didn't worry about anything else. And the closer on my deal was, and I told this to everybody I went to, if I make the team, do I get a chance to play baseball? And everybody was in agreement with that, so got to play baseball and football at Tennessee, and I'm here.
Bob, I remember we were sitting in a meeting. I was a freshman coach over here, and Trail, we were talking about Condredge. And they said, well, send Dewey down and let him see. So I go down to Huntsville, and Condredge plays in the game, and they score something like 48 points, and he has something to do with all of it. Kickoff, punt returns, intercepts, all that. I come back and got in a meeting, and Trail said, Rat, tell him what you think. I said, y'all crazy if you don't take him. And so I said, the guy can play. The guy can play quarterback. I mean, he can play defensive back and do all of this other, but the guy can play quarterback. I remember as a freshman, we went to Georgia Tech. Yeah. And so we put twins to the wide side of the field. We was going to run an option. And the late Rex Dockery, me and Rex Dockery. So I called an option, and Condredge ran the wrong way and gained about 20 yards. And so got up there and everything, and he looks over and said, we're going to run it again. It's wide open to the wide side of the field. Run it again. He goes about 30. I said, forget it. Forget it. He don't need no blocking. Everybody else goes to the right. Condredge goes to the left, and he jukes the end, and there he goes. And so there it took off, and we ended up winning.
Well, you know, Bill Battle said once about Condredge, he said, well, what's your reverse play? It's, well, our reverse is Condredge. What's your draw play?
Yeah.
Our draw play is Condredge. And that's kind of the way it works.
So it showed right then that certainly he can play quarterback and play where he wanted to, but he was an excellent quarterback and a good passer, a better passer than a lot of people gave him credit for.
You know, Bob, it's funny because you hear stories about him hearing about Condredge. I'll never forget the first time I ever hear Heath Shuler's name. I was a brief time in the NFL. My quarterback coach with the Browns was a guy that was in college the year before. And I remember one day he walks into a meeting, he looks at me, he goes, I want you to know, Tennessee just signed the best high school quarterback I have ever seen. A guy named Heath Shuler. And you know, when you're in the NFL, you're like, yeah, whatever, he's not gonna be as good as me. Well, whatever. I remember about a year later, I came over, saw spring practice, I saw Heath throw a crossing route, I'm like, ooh, I see what he's saying. Yeah, he can play. Yeah. So it's kind of, I'll never forget that. And obviously, he had a great career. And it's just kind of funny whenever I hear Heath Shuler, I remember the guy, best high school quarterback I've ever seen.
Heath, you started as a running back, though, in high school, right? Didn't that's where you wanted to be?
I always wanted to be. I didn't want to be sitting in this group. I mean, I always thought the quarterback was the guy that didn't want to get their pants dirty and the pretty boys. But
well, you are
this
right.
is a real pretty group, I tell you.
The rest of it, I don't know.
But I mean, it really got as older. I realized that I love to run the ball. I mean, I had much rather have still run the ball than throw the ball. I enjoyed the running part of it, but. I started realizing I was never going to be the Reggie Cobb, Chuck Webb, Charlie Garner, never going to be.
Was it your coach or your dad that told you?
Well, my dad. We actually played in an all-star game, and there was another running back that was playing. And my dad looked at me and he said, look, if you want to play college football, you need to go play quarterback. And so by my freshman year, I started playing quarterback.
I mean, but you had a good arm. You were a catcher in baseball, and you were also a great high jumper, won the state championship. So you had all that athletic ability. But it was a matter that your arm was strong enough to play quarterback. Was that the difference?
Well, that was my choice. I wanted to play football regardless of the position. I mean, my 8th grade year, I played offensive guard. So, I mean, it was however I could help the team. I mean, it really, at the end of the day, I wanted to play the game.
I wouldn't go that far. I played defense. I played linebacker, but I didn't go that far.
Well, I mean, I got beat out. I mean, my 8th grade year, JV was a freshman beat me out, and it was 8th grade and freshman year. And so my 8th grade year, I had coach come to me and says, hey, we got a position for you if you want to start. And I said, sure, what is it? And he says, well, here's your new jersey, number 67.
Well, a lot of people don't know that story. I don't know if I told. I wouldn't have told that story.
Well, I mean, but that's I wanted to play.
Yeah. Andy, were you always a quarterback?
I was always a quarterback, yeah.
Did you always dream about playing at Tennessee?
I did. Growing up in Tennessee, obviously in Dayton, close, not far from Knoxville, I was fortunate enough as a young kid to have a chance to come to some games. Anytime Tennessee was on TV, of course they weren't on every week back then, but when they were on TV and I wasn't at the game, I was glued to the TV. I hate to admit it, but if Tennessee lost a game, I would cry. I mean, tears, I would bawl. Sometimes I would turn the TV off early if I knew they were going to lose, just so I wouldn't see the end of the game. So, that's silly, but it was truly a dream for me to play at the University of Tennessee. And I was recruited by other schools, and I took some visits, and there were a lot of great schools. But I knew if I had the opportunity to come to Tennessee that this was where I was going to be, and I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity. So it really was a dream come true for me.
Quarterbacks have to adapt. Pat, you came here as a drop back quarterback, and then suddenly the veer comes into vogue. So talk about your adjustments you had to make. And did that help you as a quarterback?
I think parts of it did. Well, there was a lot of things that went into that helped my development. But yeah, when I first got here, we were running an kind of semi-pro style offense, some rollout, play action, things like that. And freshman year, our offensive coordinator leaves and goes to Wichita. Is that right, Condredge?
Be the head wheat shocker.
Yeah,
Yep.
he went to Wichita State.
right.
So we bring in the veer offense, which is, that was back in the day when whatever was in vogue, somebody in the country was running it, looked good, everybody wanted to try it. So we tried the veer a year, and I think then we tried the wishbone the next year. All running offenses, which I was, as you said, I was a drop back passer, and I didn't really fit into very well. I ran them the best I could, but it didn't really work out. But what it did, it helped. I think it helped my toughness because I got used to getting beat around. That's back in the days in spring football where quarterback didn't have a green jersey on or whatever.
Was a green jersey?
You were.
We knew about the green
Yeah,
jersey.
Yeah.
we had that covered.
First
Yeah,
advice,
boy.
Andy told me, he says, hey, by the way, he said, when they hand out you, go ask for the green jersey first.
But we didn't have
Green
those.
jersey? I thought we were wearing orange and white. He goes, you want the green jersey.
Or a baseball top. That's
Oh, yeah, that's-
playing shortstop.
But it was tough. We were running an offense that we weren't really suited to. We're running. I'll give you an example. We're running the wishbone offense. We've got Larry Severs, two-time All-American wide receiver. Stanley Morgan, who played 15 years in the NFL.
Yeah.
We're using him as running back.
Running post routes.
He's the running back, and we had 4 guys out of 5 on the offensive line that went on to play pro football. And we're running the wishbone. And I could throw it a little bit, so if we'd run a pro offense, I think we probably would have been pretty good. But we didn't, but like I said, all that it helped me get through some hard times, grow up a little bit, get a little tougher, and really didn't get a chance to throw the ball that much until I went to pro football.
Condredge, they talk about you. Your sophomore year, you actually ran the ball more times than you threw the ball. And running was a big part of the offense at that time in the mid-'70s.
No, not
He
really.
did it on his own.
Well,
But he could run, though. See, there's the
well,
difference.
doing it on your own makes it sound like it was designed to do that. That Artful Dodger stuff, that's not funny. That is not I'd much rather be the Peyton Manning, stand back there, throw it 5 times a series, and be a passer. We started pass plays off to throw the football.
Yeah.
But when things
Broke
break
down.
down, you got to make it. You can't stand there and take a sack. You've got to make a play, and that's where I was always taught. So, instead
not
of
feeling bad for
standing
you,
there, you get out of the way and you do what you got to do. But Coach,
It wasn't
Coach
1,
Wright,
2, 3, read, throw it out of bounds.
No. In my area, you don't throw it out of bounds. To me, that's you don't gain respect of your teammates by throwing it out of bounds and not getting hit.
There was
That's
no
just
such
the way
thing
I
as
was
throwing
taught.
the ball away.
I never was taught
right.
that. Well,
Right.
I was never taught to get rid of it. No, make something happen is what I was taught.
I always said, Bob, that I had guys behind me could run. I wasn't no runner. I wanted to be the passer, and I had good receiver. So I was going to stay there as long as I could. Now, this guy, he could move out and go because if it wasn't there, he could make things happen with his feet. So he became a double threat. We threw the ball in that aisle, as Pat said. We ran the eye. And we had good tailbacks and good fullbacks and good linemen, plus receivers, so we played off of that.
And a lot of it too, a lot of the guys like me, I think the coaches would rather have me throw it out of bounds than try to make something happen. Because if I tried to make something happen, it wasn't going to be good.
Condredge,
Not with my feet.
You didn't have to put up with. I'll never forget. About 10 years after I was out of school, I'm listening to a talk show, radio talk show. Trivia question is, who's the only quarterback in Tennessee history to have negative yards rushing in their career? And like the first 3 callers said Jeff Francis. I had like positive 10 for a career, okay? And now
think I
Saxville
had
gets
0.
it. It was Peyton Manning. So you never had to put up with that, okay?
But Dewey, you have one of the famous runs in Tennessee history in the
Well, they
Rose
always
Bonnet
say
Bowl,
it's the
4th and
longest
1.
run, but it doesn't matter. Against UCLA in '65, it was meant to be a pass play. And the late Hal Walton was playing slot back, and Johnny Mills had broken his arm. David Leake was at wide receiver, so he's supposed to go to the back of the end zone and hook and slide. Well, he goes back looking in the stands. And Walton gets knocked down, and they lay on him. And so I just keep on turning to the left, and I made it across, and people's asked me 100 times, did I make it? But all I saw was the official raise his hands, and that's all that matters.
It doesn't matter if you thought so.
Hey, you don't
That's
argue
right.
with them.
How big a win was that for Tennessee?
I think it was a big win because here we were a bunch of country boys going to the Bluebonnet Bowl, and UCLA came in there with Tommy Prothro from the West Coast going to the Rose Bowl. High-profile profile team. And, you know, we'd had a good year. That was a good team in '65. So it really picked things up for Tennessee. I think more students, more kids, more football players. Hey, this is a pretty good football team. And then it kind of got better from there on.
Heath, you and Andy have a link to when Coach Majors had the heart situation. Coach Fulmer took over as an interim coach. Andy was hired, not many people know this, you were hired, Andy, to actually replace Coach Majors on the coaching staff, weren't you?
That's right. It ended up being a brief stint replacing Coach Majors, but yeah, for a couple of weeks there, I was on the
You
staff.
just got
I had
cut
a staff shirt.
Yeah, you got cut by the Arizona Cardinals.
Right.
Kind of thinking what you're going to do, and you get the phone call to come to Tennessee.
Well, I came back. I got cut by the Cardinals, so I came back, you know, to get back, register for school, go back to try to finish, get my degree. I got a call from Coach Fulmer, you know, and obviously I'd known what had happened to Coach Majors, and he said, "Do you want to come over and help us out? We got a spot." And I said, took my class schedule, kind of tore it up, said, "Sure." I was looking for any excuse not to have to go back to class, so I did it and came in, and Heath was, like he was saying, it was his first year and the year after my senior year, so I jumped right in and had a good time with it, as brief as it was though, but it was fun those first few games and watching Heath develop early as a quarterback and getting some big wins against Florida and just in Georgia on the road. So
he talked about that transition. That was a tough time though when Coach Majors was sick and then suddenly Coach Fulmer is thrown into that spot and you guys had to play through all that.
It was difficult because of the media. It was such a high profile of, is Coach Majors going to stay? Is Coach Fulmer going to be the new coach? Are they going to fire Coach Majors? You know, what that relationship. And of course, after every game, after every practice, it wasn't what was going on the field. It was the extracurricular activities going on campus. And I think the most important, that we had a really good senior class. It kept us together. I think offensively, we were so young, we had so much work to do that we couldn't focus on anything but the playbook. And so, you know, it all worked out really well from the standpoint of winning games. You know, from the coach's standpoint, it was a new era for Coach Fulmer. It was the great successes that Coach Majors had brought to us. Different coaching styles, both I have the utmost respect for. And as players, you know, it wasn't like we were having to pick and choose between two great coaches, two great friends. It was truly, you know, a decision that the athletic board, along with the president, had to make.
Sounds like a political career right there, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Learned early.
I went through all three of them, now that I think about it, because I can remember the signs that said, "We're fighting a losing battle, getting Coach Battle out of here." Coach Majors comes in, I go play pro ball, I come back, Coach Majors hires me to work, and then I go to the hockey business for 4 years. Coach Fulmer gives me a job to play here, to work here, and then all of a sudden he's gone. Lane's here, and now Coach Dewey's here. So
You've been through all of them.
You don't have two, you had five.
I had five, and it's
And you're still here.
it's tough. Well, it's tough. I did learn a lesson with Coach Fulmer, though. Coach was not only my teammate, my boss, but my friend. And in this business, being that close to somebody is tough, really tough. And I found out now that you need to do your job, you need to respect everybody around you, do what they want you to do and more, but don't get totally mentally attached because it's not healthy. And you just got to do your job and make it work, because that about killed, well, it really bothered me with Coach Battle, and it about killed me with Coach Fulmer. So.
We're talking about transitional period. Pat, you were involved in the switch from Battle to Majors. How difficult was that?
That was really an interesting dynamic. You know, we'd come off some less than stellar seasons, and they made the decision to move Coach Battle out, and then Johnny came marching home. And he was coming out of Pittsburgh riding high, and for good reason. I mean, he went up there and had a lot of success, and so he brought his whole staff in here. And as everybody knows, it's gone through coaching changes. Everybody changes everything. I mean, it's going to be their program run the way they want to run it. And there were a lot of guys like myself that were fifth-year seniors that they really didn't want around at that time. I mean, you know, you're going to go with younger guys, build your program. So they came in and we went through the winter workout from hell. they took us over in that bubble and essentially just tried to make us quit.
Yep.
It was really tough. And the guys that stayed around, played that last year, and that was a 4-7 season, which people that have good memories remember that. People like Andy, they turned the TV off so they didn't have to remember it.
Just the last second.
But it was a different period, completely different coaching staff, guys, from all over the country, good coaches, but they coached us hard and real hard. And it was just an adjustment. And you have to go through that in life. It's like Condredge said, he's gone through 5 head coaches, and every head coach is going to do it different. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you adjust to that or you hit the road.
Well, the one thing Majors did, though, he brought in Al Saunders, he brought in Walt Harris, and suddenly, Jeff, you guys are starting to throw the ball all over the place.
Yeah, we had a pretty good run there, and there was a lot of we kind of had to. Offensively, we had a continuity of a good staff that stayed together for quite a while. So we were pretty good on offense. And, it is funny, I heard, some of those guys talk about David Cutcliffe and worry about him. For me, it was Walt Harris. I mean, it was, and I think for part of Andy, he knows, well, you did not want to get on that phone with him. And but it's one of those guys that I think most of us, when you have that good relationship with a quarterback coach, he can say anything he wants to you, but he's got your back. And I had that relationship with Walt, and he had my back. Now, he coached me hard. I remember there was a lot of times I closed up the stadium out here because I didn't have such a good practice.
And unfortunately, I was with you. If you didn't have a good practice, I suffered the consequences. With you.
Yeah, it was sometimes it was rough. In fact, I can remember a couple times going through pregame warm-up going, God, I'm sore. Man, those stadium stairs on Thursday, why are we doing that? But it was a good time. Offensively, we were good, and Andy kind of continued that on, had a great career, and we threw for a lot of yards, and then obviously Heath came on, so it was a good little run there.
Bob, I had a good position coach, Jimmy Dunn, who was a great quarterback at the University of Florida. But then Doug Dickey was a quarterback too. So not only did I have to go talk to Dunn, I had to talk to Dickey. He was the first one you'd see when you come off field. Why'd you run that play? Why'd you check off to that play? And he always had a hand in working with the quarterbacks. When it was 2-a-days, we went 3-a-days, the quarterbacks, because he was there, so I had to deal with 2, and which was good. That was good because he was tough.
For you guys to have so many great yards that you had and all the touchdowns, you had to have good receivers, and you had Johnny Mills.
Had Johnny Mills, had the late Austin Denny, a big tight end, and had Richmond Flowers, who was a world-class hurdler from Alabama. So I was very blessed to have and had great linemen. Walter Chadwick was a great tailback. Charlie could catch coming out of the backfield. So that's what we did best. We could throw the football, and that's what we did.
Well, I was just going to say, Coach Wright was a real hands-on guy, and we threw the ball quite a bit my freshman year, but we did have an option series, and there's certain things that coaches say to you that you just never forget. And we were, a certain way you run the option, and Coach Wright had this way of grabbing you, and he'd say, son, if that defensive end is down there tight as Dick's hat band, pitch the ball. I mean, I can hear it just ringing. I mean, it's all the time. Pitch the ball. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it just gets to you.
And turn your thumb under.
Thumb under, flip the ball. Yeah. I mean, it was like you just went to sleep, and that's what you heard. So anytime that defensive end made a step towards it, pitch the ball. That's what we did.
I remember the first time I ran the option, and we had the option in the eye backs, that Dunn said, now when you come down, pitch the ball and turn your shoulder, because if not, they're going to hit you in the sternum. Well, first time I come flying down there, boy, and I pitched the ball, and I was looking good. They hit me in the sternum, and I didn't think I was ever going to wake up. From that day on, I started turning my shoulders, I promise you. But that's right. He was right. Pitch the ball, turn your hand in like you turn your – that was Jim Wright.
Heath, you loved to run the option, though, didn't you?
I ran the option in high school, so once we got in the red zone, especially my sophomore year, we wanted to give a kind of a dual threat. We could get in a twin formation or a spread formation, and we'd run the option with Charlie Garner and I in the backfield. And it was we'd run the speed option right at that defensive end you're talking about, and either pitch it or keep it. And a lot of times in the beginning, they wanted to obviously always go toward Charlie. He was he was a threat anytime he had the ball. And so I would keep the ball a lot of times, go back up, replace where the defensive end was. So, I loved to run in the option. I mean, that was what I cut my teeth on in high school. But I love to throw the ball too. So once I got into, halfway through my sophomore year and in junior year, that's all I wanted to do was throw it. I mean, every play, let's just throw it every play. I think we'll be better off. But that my junior year, I think if you look at statistics, we averaged 200 yards rushing and 200 yards passing. So that was a really good balance. I had both Corey Fleming, Craig Faulkner, and Kendrick Jones, and my tailbacks with Aaron Hayden, Little Man Stewart, and Charlie Garner. If you combine them all, there was really there was very little difference in who got the ball. I mean, I think they all averaged well over 35 catches in the season because we spread the ball out and we ran the ball, we threw the ball, and having that dual threat, I think, helped us win games.
Heath, how big was that Georgia win in '92 when you guys went down there to Athens and nobody really gave you much of a chance with all the coaching distractions? But you made a couple of big runs in that game as well and a big fourth down play. How much did that help your confidence?
Well, I think it goes back to, how does the team perceive you as their quarterback? We had the quarterback duel early with Jerry Colquitt, who was my roommate. I mean, Jerry and I, we worked together, we studied together, and incredible close friends, but yet we competed on the field together. And so having that and then going in and playing the first game, we won big the first game, and then going to Athens and play, that was a very difficult, tough environment, national televised game, and it came down to a fourth 16,
Yeah,
I
fourth
think.
14 to Ronald Davis.
Yeah, and Ronald Davis, and it was one of those plays that Cutcliffe all week had worked on, and it was 62 Meyer was the play, Andy, and so the Meyer play, we'd worked on it, and I don't think I'd completed it all week at practice, and the guys in the huddle also didn't think that we were going to complete it as much, and I just said, hey, Craig, you're going to run the guy off, run the safety off, and Ronald, you got to get up underneath, get your depth to get the first down and catch the ball. And I kind of convinced myself, as I was talking to the teams, I was convincing myself it was going to be a completion, as I was trying to talk them into this was the best play, great play, we couldn't have a better play, and we couldn't lay it off, because we had to hit the crossing route.
Yeah.
And so we were open to the crossing route or maybe hit the seam route late.
Good thing about it, don't count in practice. Counts in a game.
And it was a completion.
He still owes me one for that game. Not many people know it. My claim to fame, my brief coaching stint.
That's exactly right.
There was a timeout, and I think we were on maybe the 3 or 4 yard line. The Coach Cutcliffe and Coach Former, and I was in the box with Coach Cutcliffe, and I didn't have a lot of input. I was just kind of there, charting the defense, doing nothing really, just watching the game.
Coach and hot dogs.
To be honest,
Tell the truth. Tell the truth,
just
man.
watching the game, drinking my
Coach
Coke. And there was a timeout, and I did have the headset on, and Coach Former and Coach Cutcliffe were talking about, what are we going to do here? Well, we got to get it in. We need this points, this and that, this and that. And we'd run a quarterback draw earlier in the game, and Heath had popped it for a big gain, and that was maybe 2 quarters earlier. And we hadn't gone back to it. And we'd talked all week, I remember in the meetings, that being a good play against these guys. I don't know if they ran man under or whatever it was, but we got down on the goal line, and they were talking back and forth. And I didn't even say anything. I took a piece of paper and I wrote down, I said, why don't we spread them out? And then I put QB draw, and question mark, just handed it to Coach Cutcliffe. He looked at it, and he said, Philip, Andy said something about quarterback draw. What do you think? And there was kind of a pause, and Coach Former said, yeah, let's do it. So I said, oh, no, they're going to do it. I didn't think they would do it. I was like, I hope this works.
Hey, take all the credit for it.
Yeah, but
He did. Let me tell you.
I did after the fact.
Still taking credit.
Still
wasn't the offensive line that did the credit. He was Andy.
Perfect call, the perfect
That was
time.
my call.
But I was sweating it.
But
I
it
was
worked,
like,
Andy. That's the key.
I was sweating until I saw Heath cross the goal line. Once he did, I was like, oh,
But
thank you.
Bob, the thing about it, when you got guys like Heath and Condredge that could run and were double threats, that made that offense much tougher for that defense, because if they go back to pass, they pull the ball down and can run the quarterback draw and be very effective. So really you get that dual threat.
You get in these situations, though, and Jeff, sometimes it just boils down to making a play, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It does. It is funny. They talk about that play. For me, one of the most memorable plays I ever had, and it wasn't the greatest game in the world, but it was Kentucky. I think it was my junior year. We're down by 4. It's like, third or fourth. It's like, I think third or fourth and 8. And a play comes in, and it's, quick game. It's like one of those, I know that's not going to work, but it's kind of your coach and that relationship you have with your coach and your play caller. he's basically saying, I got nothing, you get us in a play.
Yeah.
Okay? And to go up to the line.
I got nothing.
It really is. And it's one of those.
I'm done.
Or he just points at you. Like, oh, go ahead.
If you get us, and it was one of those. I get up to the line, and I knew what he was saying. I kind of knew from all that time and all that yelling and coaching he did, and got us in the right play, threw a touchdown to Terrence Cleveland, and it wasn't the greatest play in the world, but it was one of those most satisfying for me because it was a lot of hard work, a lot of communication with my coach, and he trusted me enough to say, I got nothing, you go get it.
Yeah, the worst thing though is everybody's run on to a coach at some time or another that critical time pops up, like these plays. 3rd and 8, we got to have it to keep the game alive, keep the drive alive, to go on and win. They're trying to figure out what to call, and the guy's over there, and the clock's dwindling down. He's one of those guys, he knows he's got nothing, okay? He knows he's got nothing. He's just stalling. So all of a sudden he goes,
You take it.
You get the point.
You got it, bro.
you called. It's your call. And you go, oh, yeah, great. All right.
Hey, look, I coach youth football, and I've got coaching 9-year-olds, and I got 8 plays, and it ain't easy. Okay, so you can tell all you want. It's hard to call plays, man.
Get
I'm
out of
sorry.
here. I ain't
I'm
buying that.
telling you, it's hard. I will never criticize play callers.
I remember Jimmy Dunn would say, we send a play in or whatever, get me out of a bad play.
That's
Check off, get me out of, and I tried to get them out of a lot of bad plays because when you're on the field, you know what's going, you know the alignment that if you need 1 yard or you need 2 yards, you know where to go. So a lot of times when those guys would bring the play in, I would change it and we'd get in the film room and Dickie'd say, Rat, why didn't you call that play? I said, well, Coach, they forgot to play. I had to and they'd get on the lineman. So I'd always play, but then I would take care of them later.
Everybody here's got that look in the huddle from the rest of the guys. Why did they call that play? You know that that look they get when they comes in there. You got to change it.
Change it right there.
I had one of those. Yeah, I had one of those.
You know what it is. You see, you call play, you see their heads just go.
They go, oh.
And when you have linemen, telling you, hey, change the play, don't run that. That's not a good play. So you change the play.
What happens if you change it though and it doesn't work?
Well,
You
You better hope it works.
It wasn't. You never blame it on those guys.
No.
Never blame it on. It was my responsibility.
There's a fine line in that too, though, because some of the guys in the huddle, it's never the right play unless it's coming to them. Alvin Harper, Carl Pickens.
I didn't say wide receiver.
Yeah, receivers are a different group.
Never.
Okay, that's right.
If you don't call the right play, or the lineman, they give you that lookout block. When they turn around and say, look out, here they come. And they're going, but Walter Chadwick used to always want to call a halfback pass. Because he said he was a better passer than I was, and me trying to call the play, and he said halfback pass.
He's still in a single wing.
Well, yeah, I reckon. I think he threw 3 or 4 passes, and they were for touchdowns or whatever. So he always wanted to throw.
Was there ever a wide receiver that just drove you crazy going into the huddle? Because they all think they're open every single.
Andy had all of them.
Andy
had all those guys.
Trust me, I had one that was always open, Stanley Morgan. I ain't worried about it. He told me he's open, I threw him the ball.
I had one that could always get open, Mills. It didn't matter what you call. I said, what can you beat him on? Anything you call.
I got one better than that. He didn't always get open.
Yeah.
They covered him, sometimes 2 or 3 guys, but you still threw it to him.
Larry Seavers.
Larry Seavers.
Oh, yeah.
And we were coached, believe it or not, we were coached that way.
Yeah.
Bill Battle says, Larry Seavers, run down the middle of the field.
And throw it.
Usually if there's a guy in center field, you've been taught since the beginning of time, guy in center field, don't throw it down the middle of the field. Well, Larry was the exception. I said, hey, Larry Seavers run the post down the middle. I don't care if there's 4 guys back there. Just throw it up in the air, and he's going to bring it down.
Yeah.
And he brought it down.
Yeah, if you get him in 2-man, all he has to do is make the underneath guy turn around, and you throw a jump ball with him on the other guy, and he's got a good chance to get. Only thing I'd say with Larry, and we had this communication also, and he would tell me point blank, whatever you do, Nut, if you throw it to me, it won't be an interception. I was good with that.
Yeah.
That's what you
He's either going to catch it or knock it down. That's all I need to hear.
Larry had great timing, great jump.
great hands.
He could really get off the ground and had great hands.
I remember Austin Denny, the late Austin Denny, the big tight end. He, 245 back then, 6'2", 6'3". That's big. Every time we call a pass play, coming out of the huddle, he happened to be right by me, he'd always say, I'll be open. I will be open. And 9 times out of 10, down the middle, he was open.
But there's a lot of those guys that they say that, but they're not.
They're not, that's right. But he was.
My
stable for him.
freshman year, I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, what a receiver core that Andy had.
I had those guys as freshmen, and they weren't as
Oh, my
confident.
goodness.
You had them when it was bad.
Yeah, they got confidence.
But they were good. I mean, they were
gosh,
really, really good. And they were open
Run down
a lot.
the guys you had, Andy.
Harper, Morgan.
The ones that were open, every player, the ones that actually were.
They were all
I mean,
open,
you know, Anthony Morgan, Alvin Harper, Carl Pickens, Terrence Cleveland, Thomas Woods,
Boy, that's
Corey
a crew
Fleming,
right
Craig
there.
Faulkner. I mean, I was very, very lucky, you know, to have a group of guys like that to throw to. But I can't tell you how many per diems I was promised before the games. Like, AK, get me a touchdown, man. You can have my per diem after the game. Of course, I never saw a per diem, you know. But those guys, you know, it is a situation where they are so good and so talented that it's your job. Yeah, you want to hit them right in the numbers and make a perfect throw, but having that confidence level for some of those guys to know if they're somewhat open and if you can get it in close, get it in the area. More times than not, they're going to make a play, and that's a huge comfort level for a quarterback.
As a quarterback, Bob, you want to hear a receiver come back on a crucial down when you need yard. He can get open. He can beat the man. Whatever Mills would always say, whatever you call, I'll beat him. And 9 times out of 10, as many times as we worked together, he could still fake me out, kind of like Larry Sievers. I put Mills and Sievers in that same category. That if you got it around them, they could catch it.
Weren't they both? Was he from Clinton Mills?
He was from Elizabeth, and he was a
Elizabeth,
quarterback.
that's
And,
right.
and if you got it close
Larry's
to
from
him,
Clinton.
he would catch it. And Sievers, I don't think Sievers ever dropped a pass.
No. Condredge, everyone remembers, I guess, the biggest 2-point play maybe in Tennessee
That's
history on the
Larry.
Clemson
That was
game.
Larry.
Talk about that play, because it wasn't designed to go to Sievers, was it?
No, it was a rollout, and what we used to do, and I'm sure everybody here has done that. People think, well, you know, he's scrambling around, that's just chaos. Well, it's controlled chaos, because if you reverse fields, receivers come back to you on different levels. We work on that, so you know where they're going to be. And Larry, on that particular play, in fact, if you go back and look at that play, we probably had. I was probably the only guy that wasn't in the end zone. I'll just put it that way. We were on everybody else was down blocking in the end zone, and I reversed. They thought I was going to run it. And
To this day, I still see that picture in my head, and I see Gus Manning in the back of the end zone with his briefcase full of whatever.
and the cigar. Yeah.
We don't want to know.
There's some things you can't tell.
But that's
And
the
all I
scramble
say
drill.
is to you, Gus, 0005. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's Gus's phone number, by the way. But anyway, he would, Larry would find me. You know, he'd run, if I reverse fields, he would run reverse field. And his job was usually the back of the end zone. And when I saw him running across with that little guy behind him, I knew I just had to get it up. But people seem to, if you get a chance to look at that again, after I release the ball, the camera goes and follows the ball. If you get any shot of where I was, that's where my helmet went through my teeth. I had 2. I got killed. But that's what you do. And then again, when people watch that and your players see it, your teammates, they say, you know, he gave his all, I give him all. That's the way we do it.
That's the way you do it.
That's the way it works.
You can't worry about getting hit either,
No.
can you?
Oh, no.
No.
But see what Condredge doesn't mention, being as modest as he is, I mean, it was
Am I?
an unbelievable play just to be able to be in position to get the ball off. I mean, I'd have been sacked 4 times. You know, you'd have been sacked 5.
Can't argue with that.
It was just, you know, it's an unbelievable play just to get the ball off, and on top of that, it was a perfect pass. Did he pay for it? Yeah, that's part of what you do.
But Condredge, isn't that one of the coolest things, and one of my biggest memories is when you go back to pass, maybe you're in the pocket, and you let the ball go, and you get hit, and you don't really see the result until you hear the crowd.
You hear the crowd.
Oh,
And that's pretty cool.
But you never say nothing to the lineman if you get hit. If they say, "Was that my man?" You take it and you move on, because you don't want that lookout block. Because I had a bunch that would give you that lookout block.
And I think that's
to
one
keep
way
me honest.
a quarterback gains a lot of that
That's
respect
it.
we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Taking
Because
hits.
you're going to take a hit.
Yeah, you're gonna get
I
hit.
don't care how good your offensive line is or your running backs. You're going to get hit from time to time. And if you're the guy that can stand in there, throw the ball, take the hit, and don't say a word about it.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right.
the players
Yeah.
are going to see it in film the next day. You know, if you made a good
And
play,
it's
you
the
get hit.
offensive line you want to
They
see.
feel bad
That's
enough.
it.
Most of those
Oh,
guys,
yeah.
if they're worth anything, they're going to feel bad about it. They don't want you to get hit.
Unless it's the same guy over.
Over and over. Right.
You want him out of there.
You hope the coach will see it too.
That's a coaching. That's a
That's up
coaching
to the coach
decision.
there.
Yeah.
But you know, when you step in there and you make that play, the rest of the team's going to see that, and that's part of the, that's nothing verbal you have to do. That's part of the respect you gain as a player, making that play, taking the hit. Don't say anything about it, just pop up and go to the next play.
So I had a little pat with my offensive lineman. If they missed him, I'd always tell them, make sure you get back up because I'll bring him back to you. If you miss him and he comes at me, I'm going to reverse out back to you. Get up and clock him the next time. He'll come right at you.
We've never quite had that.
No, they never got that with me. No. In fact, I never understood why they made me do the little scramble drill you were talking about. Heath, yes. Get Heath there, let him do it. Me, we get to this point, more than likely, that ball's going to be gone or I'm going to be on the ground.
I'm sure Andy's going to remember this, but my freshman year, toward the latter part of the season, I was maybe getting a little playing time after we had been up several touchdowns on a few teams. So Coach Cuckoff was working me in with some of the starting offensive line, just to, get some confidence in the huddle. So Andy says, okay, I'll call the play. So Andy's calling plays at practice. He's giving them to me, and I'm going in the huddle. My very first time. And of course, you're really nervous anyway, because this is the starting offensive line. I walk in the huddle, and I must have been really quiet about giving the play out. Tom Myslinski grabs me by the face mask, and he's a tough, nasty guy.
Still is.
Oh yeah, and I was this freshman, and he grabs me and he yells and screams at me. He kicks me out of the huddle. Andy said, no, just go back in there and just say really loud, and so I said the play really loud. I said it so loud the defense could hear it. Then he gets mad at me for being too loud. And I never understood. But I think that was Tom's way of saying, okay, here's a freshman. Let's teach him the ropes now.
Yeah.
And so Andy was giving me the plays, and and I never understood it.
I'm laughing the whole time.
He's laughing, and I'm under total stress. And we go into this whole entire season. Well, Andy he knew the playbook so well, inside and out. The very first week of practice, we're talking about Will, Mike, and Sam. I thought that was the guy's first name. I'm going back, I'm looking through all my notes thinking, who's Will, Mike, and Sam? I'm looking at the play, and I'm thinking, Will, Mike, and Sam's not even the guy's first name.
And then they started.
So I started to realize. So I went to Andy. I said, who's Will, Mike, and Sam? He goes, well, that's the linebackers, the weak linebacker, the strong linebacker, and the Mike linebacker, the middle linebacker. What? Now, no one told me the coding process we were supposed to go through.
They started telling the receivers X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
It was always X, Y, and Z. You didn't call them by it, it was X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Walt Harris, my first day in practice here, he came up with the term, and Jeff from him, he said, read through the goalpost. When you're taking your drop, read through the goalpost. And, what he meant was, watch the safeties, see how they roll. And I think, I'd never heard that term, and I'd never, coming out of high school, I'd never really read a defense. And I even talked to Jeff. I said, is he saying read through the goalpost? Jeff said, yeah, just read through when you take it, read through the goalpost. So my first couple of plays, I remember thinking, well, okay, I'll try
What's that
it.
going to do for him?
I don't understand what that's going to do, but maybe by doing that, it just magically. So my first few drops in practice, I'm looking at the goalpost. I have no clue where anybody's at, so I'm throwing the ball all over the place. But in my mind, I thought, well, that's what he said to do, so I'm going to do it. And
there should be, as a freshman, you should get this playbook.
have a glossary of terms, maybe.
Terminology.
Back in the day, 30-some years ago in high school, they said you called a pass play, it was like pat the bill, okay? 10-yard out the bill, okay, and that's what you ran. You didn't read a defense.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's been too many hits in too many years.
40. But he talked about stepping into a huddle, and with Tom Myslinski, I had a guy, and Harry Galbraith, who just passed away. And he was the best football player I've ever been around. Now, fans don't know that he was an unbelievable football player. But Randy Sanders and I used to joke around. As a quarterback, I'm taking control of the huddle. I knew Randy knew that was Harry's huddle. We're just glad he let us in it. Yeah. And he was one of those guys you respected, and he didn't say a word, but man, if he did, you did not want to be.
But you guys love the tough guys up front.
Yeah, but you never got on him, though, probably.
Oh, didn't need to.
No, you didn't need to get on him.
Kevin
Scared
Hayes,
to, yeah.
Certain guys.
Toughest, nastiest guy ever. athletics, I mean, as athletic as an offense. We brought him over from defense over to offense, and having him and Bubba Miller and Jeff Smith and those guys in the huddle that's what you live for. That's what you wanted, the toughest guys. I mean, even though sometimes they were playing on defense, you were doing everything you could to negotiate with the coaching staff. Hey, I think they'll make a great offensive lineman.
Yeah, but if you go to war, you want those guys, you want them tough guys to go with you. You want them you want them in that foxhole with you.
But people, the public, they'll look at those. They think the real tough guys are defensive players. Linebackers. They see the big hits and the Jack Tatum shots and things like that. They think those are the tough guys. The toughest guys on the football field are good offensive linemen,
Absolutely.
hands down. They take more abuse and they're just, their job is nothing but drudgery, and they keep those guys off of you and move people out of the way, help the running backs. It's not a glamorous position, but they're the tough guys. Those are the guys you want.
Guys. I mean, a guy like Jason Lehman, scored off the charts, and Kevin Mays, those guys are off the charts. So you wanted the smartest guy also in the offensive line, because, there was occasion we all had that issue. We had that deer in the head look.
Oh, God.
Headlights, yeah,
Lights
you
look,
blank.
and we went blank. And a couple of times I said, what are we doing here? What are we reading on for the checkoff? And so you wanted those real
Tendency
smart
breaker.
guys.
That's a tendency breaker. When you mess up the huddle call, that's just, you're just trying to
See,
kill
when I
their
did
team
that,
off.
I told him I was just
Well, let me
testing
ask-
you guys, make
Yeah.
sure you knew.
I was going to check off at the line.
Let me ask you this
Yeah.
question: How many guys here have gone up to the line?
Oh, I know what
and
you're
get
gonna say.
I know what and get to
Absolutely.
looking at the defense and start changing and forget the snap count.
What's the snap
Yeah.
count?
And forget the snap count. You don't want to ask nobody. So really, I was very fortunate because I had Bob Johnson, who was a great center. We never had a bad exchange. So really, I'd get up under him and I'd just start calling the snap count. And I knew he
Wait
knew.
on the ball.
He'd snap it. So you better get your hands open. You didn't want to ask nobody, because if you asked, they didn't know either.
Or change it.
Or change it. Yeah, you couldn't
Monday,
change it.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Monday was 1, Tuesday was
Yeah,
on
you
2,
better-
and Wednesday was on 3. I'd get up and have to change it because I didn't know.
No,
idea.
I've done it many times to get under there and just start calling, and he'll snap it.
All right, I forgot a lot of things. I never forgot the snap count.
I have. I did.
I can't tell you how many times. Have you ever lined up under the guard?
Yeah, I did.
I never did.
I did.
It's
Yeah,
stuff
I
Just
happens.
walk over and then act
Yeah.
like you're really checking off or checking.
Right.
Oh, I tell you what, I lined up, and
Play it
Walter
off.
Chadwick and Stan Mitchell were the two backs. And I heard them back there talking about which way to go. So I turned around to tell Chadwick which way to go. Mitchell's trying to tell him. And when I turned back around, I turned the wrong way, and I got underneath Gamage from Cedartown Joe, who was the left guard. And he hugged, well, get away from, what are you doing? And so I slid over real quick, like this behind Johnson, because the time was running, and called the play. Well, we get in the film room, and Dickie runs that back about 30 times. What is this? I said, Coach, that's Arthur Murray's dance studio. You had to, but things like that happen. It happens.
One way to get out of that signal count thing, if you check off, the snap's always on 2.
Always on 2, that's
So
right.
check off and call the play again, they'll snap it on 1.
Start fresh. But going back to the offensive line, too, I think all the guys would agree, too. You're talking about the offensive line. They don't get a lot of glamour, not a lot of the credit, not as much as they deserve. But I always tried to make sure as a quarterback that those guys knew how much I appreciated the hard work and effort and the things that they did. And I think that most of the running backs and receivers, again, that's a different breed. But I always tried to make sure my offensive line knew that how important their job was and how much I appreciate the hard work and effort they put in, because
And those guys, the offensive line, are
can't
always
do it
the
without
tightest knit group.
Oh, yeah.
And as a quarterback, it's kind of hard to get in that. And
well, I
get
always
them
try to make
confidence,
sure
yeah.
during the week, maybe
Well,
make sure I bought them a soda on
well, we'd
Wednesday
go
night
buy
or
them
a lot of
something.
Cokes,
didn't we?
Bought some
Get a lot of
Cokes for them, right?
We'd go eat
A couple
wings.
pictures of Cokes. But
Andy would take the offensive line, and everybody would kind of chip in what little change you had, and we'd go eat wings.
Oh, yeah.
And that was Andy's way of teaching us young quarterbacks, hey, take care of your offense.
But
some
it
of those
goes
guys, it
back.
took more than a little bit of change as much as they ate.
It goes back to this day. Quarterbacks are only as good as the offensive linemen.
There you go.
And it was back then, and it is now. So the quarterbacks that are very successful, they've got good offensive linemen around them.
Absolutely.
Quarterbacks pick up the tab. That's
Exactly. You better
That's
take
just the way
care.
it works.
I remember playing.
The way it works.
I'd had a hip torn against Ole Miss. I didn't practice all week. I came out to practice, and we getting ready to play Kentucky on regional TV. And Dickie said, "Can you play?" And I said, "Yeah, I can play." Well, I'm going to say that anyway. And I'd had that hip torn, so Mickey O'Brien made me a special pad. We played on TV that day. And I think I threw 4. Mills had a big day, 200-something yards catching. And I told the offensive lineman, please keep them off of me. I'll take you to Cumberland, and I'll take care of you on Cumberland Avenue. Because you guys know what I'm talking about, the ones that want to go.
What's that? Where is it?
So I had the white, never got touched all day. And we end up winning big.
Must have been thirsty.
So, yeah, they were thirsty. You got it.
We talk about it, and one of the its that a quarterback has to have is ability to bring his team back and win close games at the end. And Andy, you had 2 of the biggest comebacks in Tennessee history. One was the miracle at South Bend against Notre Dame, and the other was a Sugar Bowl game against Virginia. Talk us through those 2 games.
Well, a lot of people forget, and I always bring it up. I don't know why I do it, but a lot of the games we got behind, I was a big part of that, you know, with an interception here and there.
You're not supposed to say that.
Yeah, but try to put it in context. But you know, those were games, and again, I was fortunate to have the top players around me that I had. That when we got in situations like that, and at Notre Dame, and in big game like that, especially, or in the Sugar Bowl, those are big games. Those are big pressure type situations, and we didn't want to be in the position that we were in. But it is what it is when you get in those situations, and you got to find a way to scratch and fight and claw your way out in a calm, assertive manner as a quarterback. What you have to do, you have to stay calm. You have to let guys know. Of course, everybody knows the situation you're in. It's not a dire situation, but hey, we got to make something happen. Time's running out. You know, we put ourselves in this situation. Let's get out of it, and due in part to the coaching staff, to the top players you have in those situations. Most of the time, cooler heads prevailed. We didn't let guys that got overexcited, you know, take over the huddle or take over the offense or the defense. We were prepared for those situations. We knew how to handle it. We didn't panic. We stuck to our game plan, stuck to our guns with a few tweaks here and there. The adjustments obviously you have to make in the game. And, you know, I think that's the main part of it. It's from the neck up when you get in those situations. Stay calm, be aggressive. Sometimes you have to heighten your aggressiveness to get back in the game and things like that. But keep it contained. Don't let your excitement, emotion, your nervousness overtake you. Stay calm, stay in control, and just play the game. You know,
But you're down 31-7 at Notre Dame Stadium.
That wasn't fun at that point.
No.
Well, Andy's not going to talk about it. I mean, I was a freshman, so I was looking on, but being calm, cool, and collective, I mean, that was when Andy was at his best. I mean, when the chips were down and you needed the big play and you needed someone who was going to be calm and that you could count on. I mean, that's the reason why we're able to come back, because it wasn't always the big plays he was making in that game. It was those plays that he was checking off at the line of scrimmage, getting us in a better play, getting us out of that bad play. And that was the difference that I was able to see of knowing the plays that were being called because of his wealth of knowledge of the game. That put us in a better situation. It was one first down after another first down that puts us in the end zone, and making those real consistent. I mean, every throw was right where it needed to be, and it was going to the right person. It wasn't always going to where it was designed, but it was going to the person that was open.
That's the difference in an average quarterback and a great quarterback. Those other 10 guys looking for you to come back, they're looking for your leadership, and that's where that leadership ability comes in, and that separates the average from the great ones.
You know, going back to the game, it was a situation where the game itself, you know, we felt like going into the game, you know, Notre Dame was ranked a little higher than us. I think they were like 3rd at the time. They were in the national championship picture. They were undefeated. I think we had lost to Florida and Alabama earlier in that season. So we were, I think, maybe top 10, 12, somewhere around in there. But anyway, it was a big game. But we went into the game with every bit of confidence, knowing that we're going to go up there and we're going to kick their butts. We played them here the year before, should have beat them here. You know, it felt like we should have. Played with them toe-to-toe when they were ranked number 1. And the game didn't go the way we wanted it to early, you know, the first half, due to a lot. We knew because of us, the things we were doing, the interceptions I threw, the turnovers I had, the defense giving up the gashing running plays and not being where they were supposed to be. And when we went into halftime, we just got the kick blocked and returned it for a touchdown. So that was a huge momentum shift, and that did give us a big boost. But we got in the locker room and said, guys, you know, Notre Dame they're not doing anything really to beat us. You know, we're doing it to ourselves. You know, we're making too many mistakes. Defense, one guy's out of place and they're hitting us. Or on offense, you know, we're missing one block here or there when we're close to springing a play. So we knew at halftime, like, we kind of calmed ourselves down, had the big play, but we knew we were with them, playing with them. We knew we had the talent and the ability and the game plan, and everything was in place for us to go up there and beat them, but we weren't doing it. So luckily at halftime, we calmed down. I know the defense made some adjustments. We didn't do a lot on offense as far as adjustments. We're like, guys, this, what we've got is good. We can beat them. We can play with them. We just got to quit being so good to them. So fortunately, in the second half, we didn't turn it over. We started executing better. Things started going our way. The momentum built, and then it just kind of snowballed, kind of the way it did for them.
The screen pass to Aaron Hayden. Was that your call? Did you check into that?
I'd love to take credit for that. But
Take credit.
yes, I could. Yeah, but well, no, it's something we had talked about in a series or two before that. Notre Dame had a tendency. They were a pretty bland defense, to be honest with you. They were cover 2, cover 3. They relied on their athletic ability. They had great talent at a lot of positions, a ton of NFL guys on the field. So I guess they didn't want to overload those guys. They wanted to let those guys just play football. So they were a pretty vanilla defense, I guess. They had a few changes here and there, but one of their tendencies when we got to a certain point in the field, around midfield or going in, they would bring safety blitzes. And we had talked about that play. It was something we had in our offense all year, but, in that situation, a little screen like that is a great call. Get them all coming. And the series before that on defense, I was on the phone talking to Coach Former, and he said, hey, don't forget when we get to this point in the field, we may call jet screen. I think that's what we called it, jet screen, Liz and Rip, whatever. And I remember at the time, said, Coach, now if they blitz, we leave that on, right? I just want to double check. And he said, oh, yeah, that's what we want. So we got to that point in the field, driving late, and we called the play, and I got to the line of scrimmage, and I remember seeing that safety starting to creep up. Yeah. And I was like, oh, gosh, we got him. Let's execute this thing. And luckily,
hold on to the ball.
I was thinking, get the snap, get it back.
Fumble it, though.
Don't fumble, get back. And luckily, it was a great call, the perfect call at the perfect time. I threw the ball a little bit too hard to Aaron Hayden. He had to make a pretty good catch. So that my heart almost stopped when I let it go. But once he caught the ball, we got him. We caught him. We caught him in the right play at the right time. Our offensive line didn't have anybody to block really, and Aaron just had to
Hey, you burst your bubble, Andy, but I remember the year before.
Uh-oh.
Late in the game, I remember it because I can remember it in the stands, and I remember you tried to throw that corner out against 2, and it's so easy in the stands to see it. I'm like, AK, no!
Oh, I've done it. Even with Peyton, the few mistakes of course, he didn't make very many here.
Yeah.
But even the couple of mistakes he made, I'm in the stands, and I'm like, no. But, and like you said, it's so easy to see it in the stands, and it's different on the field. But that play, he baited me into throwing the ball, and he made a good play on it. But
that was your 60th pass of the day, too.
Yeah, we had to air it out a little. We had to change plan a little bit that day.
I had to play 2 years at those 60.
I was going to say,
All right, we talked about Andy's comeback and at the Miracle at South Bend and the Sugar Bowl. You guys have any comeback games that you remember that stand out?
well, the UCLA for me in '65. We were down with a minute and a half, 2 minutes to go, and had about 60 yards to go. And so I went over to the sideline. We called timeout, and so I went to Dickie to what play to call, and he opened his mouth and nothing came out. He didn't know what to say, so I went back in the huddle, and they said, "What did he say?" I said, "He said for me to throw and you guys to block, and we're going to go score." And luckily, we went down and ended up winning the football game.
Jeff, what about you?
For me, it was my junior year. We had a pretty good offensive line. We were in a bowl game at the Peach Bowl, and pretty good on offense. And we had come back quite a bit that season. Had a couple games. Vanderbilt, I think I threw 3 first half interceptions. Came back and beat them. But we were in the bowl game, and I'll never forget. They scored to go up by 4, and we got the ball back with 4 minutes. And I remember looking at John Bruin. He just looks at me and goes, "We're going to win." So it's one of those, we did develop that confidence that we knew we could win. So that was for me. It wasn't just one game. It was that whole team that had developed that confidence that when it was late, we were going to win.
Heath, what about you? Any game that stands
I
out?
think it'd be the Georgia game.
Yeah.
For the fact of we were playing Georgia, highly ranked team, come back at the very end, but it was Corey Fleming, actually I threw a pick. Most people don't remember. Threw a pick, and then he actually strips the ball from the defensive back who caught the interception. When we recovered the ball again, so that really helped us kind of get back. And then we had 80 yards to drive, And during that 80 yards, I mean, it took a team effort. We ran the ball, we ran the option, we threw the ball, and of course the 4th and 14 was a big play that Ronald Davis caught for a first down.
But that game gave you a lot of confidence.
And of course Andy's call from the box.
But it gave you a lot of confidence, didn't it?
It did. I mean, I think that
Andy
really
said.
kind of started the whole, and then we came back the next week and beat Florida.
That was big. Condredge?
Well, I guess you want me to say the UCLA game, but I guess that would have to be because the other ones, it really didn't matter. I got injured and
No, we're talking about 74 UCLA here in
74
Neyland Stadium.
UCLA. I will tell the story. Pat will finish it. But one thing Pat said to me, he was a wide-eyed freshman, I think, and he said, whatever you do in this game, don't get hurt. And
Because Pat was your backup.
he was a
basically.
backup guy ready to go, and I said, nah, I don't even think about stuff like that. Well, all the film that they show the wrong play. The play that they show in the film when they talk about this is the second play. The play that I got hurt on was an option left. The defensive end runs up the field. I go underneath. The scraping linebacker hits me right underneath my shoulder. And it just went numb, and I made it through one more play, but the second play was a pass play, and if you watch it, I get ready to go back, and when I try to raise my arm, it doesn't go anywhere. That's why I ran the ball, and I was trying to get on the ground, and they took me to the hospital, and I got to fess up. Everybody thinks I got a great tape job. Well, I got a really good tape job. And I came back, and Pat had to go in and handle it, and then we came back and tied it up, and the best thing I did was made sure I got the ball in Stanley's hands, and that was what I did on the first play. Threw a little quick screen to him, and we got rolling, tied him up.
All right, Pat, talk about when Condredge went out, all of a sudden they say, number 4, get in there.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, you've heard of little kids having accidents. Well, I almost had one.
Probably did, really.
Might have, But I went in and tried to hold it together. I'd never played before, and this was a big stage. Back in the day, this was the only game on TV. Now everybody's on TV. Yeah. It was the game, the Saturday game on TV, and big stage, and I'd never been involved in anything like that. And I walk out on the field, and UCLA has 2 Samoan linebackers. I'd never seen a Samoan before.
Yeah.
They get hair down to here and muscles just rippling and
Big feet.
yeah, and big Doberman eyes. I was out of my element. Let's just put it that way at that particular time.
Been there.
So I tried to hold it together best I could, and didn't do bad. Did fumble down in the end zone. But anyway.
Where you at, Condredge?
Yeah, where you at? So
Don't get hurt.
So anyway, we're getting into the third quarter, and all of a sudden, the stands, you hear this roar building. It builds, and then, it's wild. It's almost like a standing ovation. I look up, and Condredge is trotting through the other end zone. And the minute I saw him, man, I stood up with the rest of the crowd. I'm not kidding you. This is honest God truth. I was cheering for him too, because I was happy to see him back, obviously. And then he went out and did what he always does. And
You made him famous, didn't you?
kind of took me off the hook a little bit.
The numbness went away, didn't it?
Yes, and
But Pat, you mentioned the fumble you had, and that would have been devastating to a lot of people. But you have to have that mindset that you got to just play it off and play the next play. Because, it could have gotten out of hand. You really bounced back and kept that game situation where Tennessee
it really
get back
could
in
have
it.
gotten out of hand because that happened early. And like I said, I was, my mental state was touchy at best at that point anyway, and then I fumbled in the end zone. But you just, you got to suck it up. You got to go play because there's another play and another play and another play. And if you take that ball and throw it to the other team and they take it, before you know it, you're blown out.
So talk about your return and then talk about the end of the game because it's probably one of the most famous ties in Tennessee history.
Well, they took me to the hospital to get an X-ray, and when they found out, the question they asked me was, "Do you want to play?" And I said, "Sure, I want to play." So they taped me up so I could play.
Take that aspirin on there, didn't they?
Yeah. So I get back to the
Magic tape.
Yeah, back to the stadium, and I come around and we go in and play. And we go down the field and score, and we tie it up coming the other way, and we go for 2. And a lot of people don't know this, but on on the touchdown, I tore my knee up, and we were going to go for 2, and I kind of made the coach. I don't think I knew we were going to run a sprint out and have an option pass or run or throw it to Larry. That's basically what our 2-point play was, and I couldn't get outside, and so we kicked the extra point, and hopefully we get it back, and we never got it back. So it ended up in a tie, but that was basically it. Finally got the knee fixed about 2 years later, and that's part of it.
Every time you guys are introduced in the first paragraph, it's former Tennessee quarterback, and it's something, Heath, I know that you take a lot of pride in that.
Well, it changed your life forever. I mean, once you sign on the dotted line to enroll in class and be on this football team, for the rest of your life, you'll be always known as a quarterback for the University of Tennessee, and it's had such everlasting impact on my life. And Condredge, when I came in as a freshman, and Andy was always with the coaches. I mean, I would find myself, and he and I would start working out, and after everyone would leave late at night, Condredge would come over, and he and I would throw. And so not only to remember, my dad talking about Condredge from the days when he played, talked about how great he was, for him to coach me and to teach me those little small things that makes huge impacts in games. I mean, from the little ball drills that we did bouncing the ball on the turf, to talking about the mental preparation. I mean, that forever changed my life. And having to work and having that opportunity to work with Condredge, having the opportunity to work and meeting the swamp rat, for the very first time. I mean, it never stops, and it's handed down to that next generations of quarterbacks, and we're getting much older. And so we start fading, look at our record books. I mean, we're fading really fast now with the way the offenses are going. We're fading fast in those record books. But you start to realize that's what it's all about. I mean, we are quarterbacks at the University of Tennessee, and it's changed our lives forever.
Do you agree?
I certainly do, and I like the word former instead of old, because I'm the oldest guy here, and I took over when it had been a single wing. And so we kind of started a new generation there of the Dickie I. And there's a lot of kids that would love to play quarterback at Tennessee. And I've always said it's special to be one of them and to be with guys like this. And to be one of the quarterbacks that took over from the single wing to the I, and then from there it ran. And those were good teams back then. There was a lot of great players, and the friendship and your teammates that you keep forever, and you get to hear stories. Every time you get around guys, you hear different stories, and that's what's fun.
Jeff, you'll always be a Tennessee quarterback. That's special.
Yeah, it is. And find as you get older, a couple things. I mean, you find like some people that kind of went to school different times. They kind of mark time by who was the quarterback then. I played when Andy was there. I was there. They kind of they get the progression right. And for me, great memories. I can't help that. There's a song. Obviously, Kenny Chesney released a song, "The Boys of Fall," and for me, guys that hadn't played in a while, those 40, 45-year-old guys, I heard it, I had to pull over. I got emotional. Okay, there's a line in that song though. It says, standing in the huddle, waiting for the call. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. But what these guys know, what is really cool, is being able to stand in the huddle and make the call. Mm-hmm. And that is something I will never forget and I miss.
Pat, you've met your wife here, Pat.
Yeah.
You've lived here since you came here from Oklahoma. So your Tennessee experience not only sets you up for a good, long career in the NFL, but it's really set the whole course for your whole life, hasn't it?
Sure has. It really seems strange to me a lot of times. I think back that, I grew up in Oklahoma, but I've been here so much longer than I was there. You always think back to where you were born. You say, oh, that's my home. Well, it's where I was born, and that's where my family's at, but this is my home. Came here to go to school as a 17-year-old freshman and essentially never left. Went to New York, obviously, but this is where I made my home. I met my wife here in college, And State is a great place to raise kids. I don't think you can find a better place in the country. You know, playing quarterback here, I didn't get to play as much as a lot of these guys here when I was in school. I was predominantly a backup. But, you know, it doesn't make any difference. I still go out and people say, you know, they still look at you to say you're a Tennessee quarterback. You know, you're in a fraternity, you're in a special fraternity. And there's guys that played after us, they're talking about, you know, how the records have faded and whatnot. But, you know, you've got Clausen. And
Times have changed.
You know, a lot of good quarterbacks have come through here. A lot of good quarterbacks.
Manning bad.
I forget. Did he play here? Yeah. Peyton, you know, Bobby Scott, you know, Ames
Martin.
Clausen,
Yeah.
T. Martin, Tony Robinson, a lot.
Jimmy Streeter.
Jimmy
Yeah,
Streeter,
Alan
a lot of great guys that come through here that were quarterbacks, and so it's you know, to be a part of that is pretty special.
You know, Jeff, I remember when you finished your career, I mean, you had shattered all the passing records and all that kind of stuff, and you're thinking, gosh, nobody will ever get those numbers that Jeff Francis put up. You've had a couple of guys already zoom past you, haven't you?
Yeah, I joke with everyone. I don't even know where I'm at, like on the charts, and they say I'm fourth on the list. I go, actually, if you look at it a little closer, I'm fifth because I think Peyton lapped me. You know?
He lapped everybody.
I know it. I know it.
And I don't know if anybody enjoyed or took more pride in wearing the orange shirt than you did, because being from Ray County and wanting to be a Tennessee quarterback your whole life. So, I mean, today, you're linked with this place, whether you like it or not. You're linked as a Tennessee quarterback.
Well, I like it. And as you know, Jeff talking about the emotional part, you know firsthand at a game this year at LSU during the radio. I mean, I got emotional at that end of that game. I couldn't fight it back. Every game, especially on senior day, I have to fight back the tears when I see those seniors run through that tee. It's a special
Bob,
place.
I remember the first time I met Andy Kelly was in Chattanooga at a gathering. And I remember, and Andy probably don't remember this, I told Andy he was coming up here, and he was highly sought after. I said, be patient and let it come to you. You'll get the opportunity to play. And he took it, and look what happened.
I remember that.
Isn't that true for all you guys?
I think the thing too that I've taken away too that I didn't even realize you know, there's other great programs in this country, no doubt. There's other great schools, other great traditions, but my brief time in the NFL, in the years in the Arena League, I don't think I really realized the amount of respect that this program and this position has from other guys, other players that played at other schools. They know a lot more about Tennessee than I know about their school.
Yeah.
I don't care to know, to be honest with you. I mean, there's great schools and a lot of great traditions, but I was blown away by how many guys know a lot about Tennessee. I mean, it just goes to I think it's a tribute to the tradition, the stature that the University of Tennessee has in this country. I mean, I was blown away by the guys that knew everything about Tennessee, and they'd never been here, never played here, but you know, it's a big deal.
Well, you guys have all played a big part in helping build this tradition and carry it forward. We really appreciate your time, and we thank you for all the great memories, sharing your stories today, and all the great things you've done for Tennessee. So thanks very much.
Go Big Orange.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.